podcast for the building industry. In this episode, we're talking about how smiling can change your business. It can change your life. It can change lots of things. But we've got an expert on smiling. He's got good teeth, which is really handy for someone who talks about smiling a lot. So I'm going to introduce you to Mr. James Short, a.k.a. Shorty. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Mick. Really appreciate it. I am fantastic, and I love that. Got a good set of chops on me, but always like to display them out in the world. So you're on par there, mate. Thank you.
Now, we've got a strange sort of setup that happened because you and I met each other many years ago in a coaching group. We had the same business coach, Taki Moore, and we used to see each other at the in-person get-togethers and have a hoot. And then one day, I saw you online speaking to another bloke that I knew. He was a client of ours, a coaching client. And I thought, what a small world. And now that other bloke, we won't mention his name because he'll get a big head, is now part of Builder's Business Black Belt and works in the ToolShed and is doing great things. But he's also partnering with you in an organisation called the Business of Smile. So tell us about how that came about. Like, how did you meet you-know-who? And why did you decide to get into this? Because it's a fascinating story, because you guys never met face-to-face for a long time until, I think, this year. You didn't see each other until this year face-to-face. So you just had an electronic relationship. So how did it all start?
Yeah, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, Scott Carson. A mutual friend, once again, another mutual friend, Alan Stevens, we call him Papa.
Yes.
He goes, Shorty, he goes, I've got a friend that would be really good to you to meet. I think very similar mindset and values and so forth. And he said to the other guy, he goes, I think you should meet Shorty, very similar. And anyway, as soon as we met, we hit it off straight away. And we just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And it was very much in alignment. And this was all done via Zoom. This was just, when was it? This was 2020, I think it was. Yeah, 2020. And we just hit it off. He goes, Shorty, I got a dream. I got a goal. I said, and I was just wondering if you're in. I said, yeah, I am. He goes, but you don't even know what it is yet.
You didn't tell him. You
I
haven't said what
I'm
it
in.
is. I don't care.
I'm in. And he goes, I want to run from Sydney to Melbourne and hand out 10,000 pairs of our Smiley socks. And I said, mate, when? So from that instance, it was like two peas in a pod. We were just bouncing off each other, and we spoke, and we do speak, pretty much every single day. Either super early or super late, whatever it is. But we connect, and we're on that mission. We were going to do it in 2020, but obviously because of lockdowns. So we're going to do it in 2021, but because of lockdowns, we couldn't get through the border. Then we're going to go do it again this year. We reconvened it to this year, and then someone thought he'd have a comeback in his AFL career and tear his bicep off his bone. So that pulled that out, and then I had a bulging disc in my back. So that was out for this year. So we're gearing up for next year to do that. But in the meantime,
in electric wheelchairs, or how you
yeah.
do it?
Zimmer frames. But in the meantime, we've done some beautiful events together to raise the hope and the connection within local communities, to bring some support, particularly around mental health, particularly around starting conversations and reconnection for people within themselves, communities and families. So it's been a beautiful journey. And it wasn't until this year where we did the Northern Rivers Run, where we spent 3 days going from Evans Head to Lismore to Mullumbimby up here, and we handed out about would be close to 700 pairs of socks through all the flood affected victims up here where I am in the Northern Rivers, where we first met. Up until then, we were chatting all online via Zoom, and he thought I was Max Headroom,
Yeah.
and could only, I was like artificial intelligence. But you should see that there's a video on us embracing when we first met, and it was a hoot. That's for sure. It was a hoot.
I've
So
seen it. The big bear
it's
hug.
pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Pretty
Yeah.
funny.
So with the events, how does that work? Like, I know you guys did a lot to raise money for restocking a school that got affected by flood, and delivered like 10 grand's worth of exercise equipment to the school. How does that happen? Do they find you? Do you find causes to help? Like, what's the story?
Yeah, so my kids were attending the living school when
Yeah.
it got flooded, and immediately when the water went down, I was in there ripping out carpet and just trying to make amends of what was happening. It was literally going through Lismore like a war zone. The smell, the sights, the emotions, it was just so overwhelming. We both thought, how can we help? And Sporty's both very dear to both Scott and I.
Mm.
And so we thought, how can we support the school get back onto its feet? And that's why we thought, great connection is sport, exercise equipment. And that's where we rallied and we did the David Goggins challenge, the 4x4x48. He did it in Melbourne. I did it up here in Byron Bay. And where we raised money for the sports equipment. And that challenge was where we would run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So that was pretty epic. I was very spoiled up here, had the end of the ice bath and massage, and Scott was dealing with the wind and the hail and everything else in between.
Running around in the mud. And he had tremendous support. One of the people that was there, one of the ladies that was there, Andrea Marshall, and coincidentally, I was just speaking with Andrea and Scott on the ToolShed about 2 hours ago.
Saw that.
Because it's happening again. Like Andrew's up in Maroopna, up near Shepparton there, and it's just devastation. And she was incredibly emotional about, like, she's okay, but just seeing the devastation around her and what people have lost, and they've got people staying in their house because they've lost their house and all of this sort of stuff. And she's an absolute champion. And it seems like the business of smiles attracts champions, really good people. I watched there was a trip in a camper van or something, and that was sort of Facebooked along the way. Tell us about what that was all about.
So that event is called our Connection Experience, and we had John Craig come and sponsor that event. And so that was 3 days where you come and hang out with the likes of myself, Scotty, and Papa. We call him Alan Stevens, and we walk the streets. We walk the streets and we hand out the socks. We have conversations. We acknowledge people. We see them. We hear them. We provide and give them hope. Because we're there, we actually listen to them. And through the gift of the pair of socks, it brings that hope. It brings that awareness. It's okay to talk to our dark days. And that was a hoot, right? That was the first time that we all caught up together, that Scott and I saw each other in person. And for three days, we drove. Well, Scott and I we were running on the street, and John and Papa were the support crew. But to get John out there and to see, because a lot of the times we give money to charities, but we don't actually know where that money goes. And the Business of Smiles is a registered charity organization.
Yeah.
And so this connection experience allows you to come and see firsthand what the impact of handing out these socks are. And it is a life-changing experience. It's a massive personal development experience that the investment is just absolutely, so you're helping someone else, but you're also helping yourself. And so that's why we have these connection experiences where come and hang out with us for 3 days. And it could be, that person's local community. It could be, like, for example, Shepparton. We're trying to gear up for an event up there to help Andrea and all the beautiful community in Shepparton. Once again, to do a connection experience to to just listen, hear, and support people in those areas.
So the topic that I called this conversation is how smiling can change your business. And we'll get back to the business of smiles because I want to really make people aware of the value and how they can contribute and so forth. But just the physiology of smiling. What do you understand of its value? Because you guys run around with big smiley face T-shirts and you've got one on there. And I know in Builder's Business Black Belt, here's my jumper. In Builder's Business Black Belt, Scott and you spoke at one of our intensives, so our 2-day get together for our Black Belt members, and we bought them shirts and we bought them socks, and there's a number, quite a decent number of people in that group where that shirt has changed their life. Like I still see them today. They got them on the back of their seats or behind them or whatever. And so many of them have said, I just walk in the room where the shirt is and I start to smile. So smiling changes lives. It's super powerful. What do you understand is there any science behind it? What's the go?
What's the go? There is, right? And that's the thing, because we as people don't necessarily see our own smiles because we're not looking in the reflection. But when we see a smile in others, we have an instant, beautiful internal reaction. What happens is we release a set of endorphins that gets released, and our muscles shift. And when our muscles shift and we go from a frown to a smile, what it does, it sends a chemical reaction. And so what happens is that when we can actually go into a room and perform a smile, what are you going to get back? You're going to get a smile back. And so when you're smiling, instantly you're feeling good. You're lifting your energy. You have a different outlook in life, all because through a smile. And those chemical reactions that's happening throughout that body, you're getting that little fix of like, oh, that positive energy going, how good is this? And so when you're doing it, it's like a yawn. When someone yawns in the room, next person's yawn, next person's yawn. It's the same as a smile.
Yeah.
As soon as you start smiling, the person next to you starts to smile. And we've done so many different experiments around this. If you go into an elevator and you just look at everyone, but if you go into an elevator and you smile, you're going to get a smile back. And so you're feeling good. That person's feeling good. You've shifted the whole energy in the elevator, and it's just a beautiful experience. It's a really nice connection experience because we can connect even without saying anything through the power of the smile. And so when you have that power and of gifting a smile, that shifts someone's outlook for the day. The number of stories that we've had where people have been down and out, but as you said, they've seen the smile, seen the pair of socks. All they need to do is look down at the pair of socks and an instant smile because they know the meaning of the socks. They see the bright yellow colors. They see the smiley face on it. And that in itself shifts the whole internal energy. So it allows you to have a different outlook in life.
I do remember some time ago reading about a study in some sort of hospital where they were treating people for depression and other mental health challenges, and they just did an experiment where they got, I haven't got one right here, but imagine putting a pencil in your mouth and pushing it hard back in your teeth and grabbing it in your teeth like that, and you had to walk around for so many minutes, so many times a day with a pencil jammed in your face. and apparently the results were outstanding as far as the people that were required to walk around with a pencil in their mouth for a few minutes at half a dozen times a day. It just changed their behavior. It changed their energy. In some cases, I heard that it either sometimes reduced or even eliminated the necessity for medication, throwing a pencil in your mouth.
I love that.
But,
And that's
and
the
it's
thing. That's the thing, Mick, if I can just jump in there,
yeah,
because if you look at the hospitals, right, and even in the kids' wards, what do? They get the clowns in, they get the
mm,
superheroes in, they get those things in, they get the animals in, they get all those things that make those kids smile. Why? Because it brings hope, it brings joy, it brings that the ability to not think about what you're maybe going through right now and think about what the possibilities are. And that's the beautiful thing about a smile, because it allows you to have hope. So,
mm,
so powerful.
mm. So I'm a bit interested in just the conversation that you and Scott had originally, because the the initial conversation was about running from Sydney to Melbourne, which is a very crazy conversation to have in the first place.
Yep.
How did that morph into a registered charity called the Business of Smiles? Was that a thing before the run, or came out of the run, or how did it all eventuate?
So Scott had Sunday sessions that he was running every Sunday morning in Melbourne, which were a bunch of blokes coming together every Sunday, and they would run together, just to start the day off, and then they would all, share their stories, and that was a rule for a bunch of guys to really have an outlet. And then when we were sharing, our stories, I had a very similar experience that I used to do every Saturday morning. So there used to be a half a dozen blokes. We would all go for a run, we'd go for a swim, and all have brekkie together, and then would get on with the day. And that resulted in the similarities of, wow, the power of coming together as bunch of blokes of all different
Yeah,
walks, all different shapes, and all different sizes,
yeah,
to connecting and having conversations and having a laugh. Because you get a bunch of mates in a room, what do? They just crack
mm,
jokes at each other, the banter, the fun, and so you lift the whole weight of whatever you're going through, because you're having that laughter. And the third component is the ability to share, exercise and sharing. And so when we combine those things, that's where that idea of, well, Scott has always had that idea, but it's like, wow, there's a power in that of doing that event. And we have a philosophy of 1 + 1 = 3, and we know by one pair of socks you're actually having an impact of 3+ people, because they take them home, they tell the story, then they share the story, and then they share the story. Next minute you're having an impact. And we know through from Melbourne to Sydney that there's been so many natural disasters. There's
mm,
been fires, there've been floods, and so there's so many coastal towns and towns through the old way going from Sydney to Melbourne that are still have been impacted from fires, for example, a couple of years later. And so what we want to do is to bring hope back into those communities.
yeah. Um, I must admit, I was a little bit distracted when you were talking then, because I've got this other window open with comments, and I'm not even sure where these comments come from. Like, because we're blasting out through Restream to every different social platform that we've got, and somebody has put some website on there, and it just says hot photos of my sister, and they've put it in there 3 times. So I don't know why somebody is spamming in the comment section while we're having this conversation, but
Oh dear me.
there you go. Hopefully they've got their jollies and they can run away now. Um, the business of smiles is like it really is an amazing movement. Let's call it a movement. And it, I really encourage people to get behind it and support it. Builders Business Black Belt are always doing whatever we can to get behind it and promote it and contribute to it wherever we can. Tell us about some of the other stories or other experiences you've had, because I think that's what we need to understand, the power of just having these conversations, giving them a pair of socks, spending time, making space for people and just sitting with people. It's really, really powerful, and it's so necessary and needed these days. Can you tell us a story or two that gives us an
Definitely.
understanding of how the simplicity of this is incredibly powerful?
So a couple of months ago, we did the Northern Rivers run, where we started at Evans Head up here on the Northern Rivers. We ran to Lismore and then onto Mullumbimby. And the first stop was Evans Head, and we partnered with Rotary, and we put on a breakfast for one of the recovery centres. So there's a caravan park in Evans Head that turned itself into a recovery centre. So where people had lost everything, out on farms, lost houses, lost cattle, lost everything. And so they were in there. It was a place where they were not there permanently, but ready to be rehoused. There was one gentleman there, and he had lost everything. He was a truck driver, and he used to write poetry. And Scotty saw him first up, and he goes, "Let me chat to him." And he was so resistant. He was a very colourful character, told Scott where to go. But over time, Scott just sat with him and just listened to him. And by the end of the breakfast, he actually gave Scott all his life work poetry. In a matter of an hour and a half, the connection that was formed and the trust that was built. And this guy didn't want a bar of anyone, but just through listening, just through asking questions, just through gifting the pair of socks, really connected with him and shared all his poetry. And so what we did is that we've taken that poetry and now we've put that into a book for him.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, with illustrations and the whole bit. So it's been, another story where we're going through Lismore in the recovery centres. And the idea was just to have a breakfast at the school in Lismore, and then we're going to run through to Mullumbimby. But the word got out that we were in Lismore through some of the other organisational charities that were running the recovery centres, and they asked us to come down to the recovery centres. And these places were the hardest hit. So it was like, we're talking drug abuse, we're talking alcohol abuse, we're talking domestic violence, we're talking, it was such a challenge. But we walked down there and we just sat and we listened to them. And, they use the socks as beer holders and so forth, and for their mitts. It was unreal. But we got news from one of the young guys that because of us, he got himself clean.
Wow.
Because of our conversations, he booked himself into rehab, and he's still clean today. So just from listening, just from a pair of socks, just from acknowledging. And so there are plenty of stories like this, not just those ones that have had challenging times, but even up here in the Northern Rivers. So many times I've been out in the local community through Byron and Ballina and Lennox, and just to share and just to say, "Hey, how you doing? I just want to acknowledge you. I just want to say thank you for doing your best right now." And they go, "Yeah, I know it's been tough. I know you're going through a lot right now. And do you mind if I gift you a pair of socks?" And I share the story about the socks with the black dots being our dark days. We all have them, we all face them, we all go through them. But the yellow's the nice winter warm sun. As you can see, there's more yellow than dark dots. And that's your family, friends around you in your dark days. And so by sharing that story and connecting, what people tell you in that short 5-10 minutes, they open up about everything and anything that's been going on for them. Suicides that they've experienced, that they've seen through loved ones, marital breakups, drug and alcohol abuse. It is absolutely incredible what's happening out there in our communities, but no one is listening. And so this is a grassroots program that actually goes out into communities, sits and listens and takes the time to acknowledge, to see them and to hear them and to gift them the socks, to provide and to give that little ray of hope that you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, in black belt and even before that, like back in the days when I was living the dream in the early '90s, selling life insurance. Don't pretend like you've been lying awake at night and you've gone, I wish I could do that. Selling life
I know.
insurance. It's a great gig, and we just learned about listening back then and understanding, the whole Maslow's hierarchy of human needs and things like that, and being understood or being heard or being listened to genuinely is emotional oxygen. It's the equivalent of suffocation. And somebody listening to you was somebody who kicked down the door to rescue you from suffocation. And I think that is the case with most humans. And obviously, when they're under pressure and they're in awful situations and losing things, it can be one of the most powerful and most valuable experiences for them to have. But it just needs to be something that everyone needs to pay more attention to. The old habit 5: first seek to understand, then to be understood. Out of the 7 habits of highly effective people, Hugh Mackay, why people don't listen. And he says, people tend to listen to those who listen to them. But if everyone wants to be listened to and nobody's listening, we're in a bit of a shit sandwich. And having someone like yourselves starting that process and even teaching people how to listen is amazing, because if somebody has a problem like is what is going on now, sometimes there isn't a solution, not at least not an immediate solution, and listening and having a feeling of being heard can be the most powerful solution without an actual solution being involved. What are your thoughts?
Couldn't agree more. It's absolutely spot on. There's a young lady in one of the recovery camps, and I just sat with her. I said, "How you doing?" And you could just see the wall was up. I call it the Great Wall of China. It was up. It was like, "Oh, Shorty's not going over this one. Got to get the excavator out for this one." And I just sat in silence, and I said, "How you doing?" And she was like really irritated. I said, "Hey, how you holding up?" She goes, a few explicit words. So I said, "Okay." I said, "What else is happening?" And then that was it. She hadn't seen her kids for over 2 months with her ex-partner. And because she was in the recovery center, she wasn't allowed to bring the kids over. And it was doing her head in, and she was just, all those internal questions that was going on for her. And there was no solution right there because she had no house to go to. And so she had to just to ride it out. And so just by being there, it gave her a sense of hope. And it was so beautiful because then Scott and I, obviously we left and we went for a run. And I knew I'd connected to her heart because she drove, we after an hour of running, we hear this beep, 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 beep on a horn. And guess who it was? It was her. She's yelling out, "Okay, guys, we love you." Like, and just like, like they're the moments that you've had an impact. And, when you can feel that connection, it is beautiful. And that's the thing, as you said, Mick, it's, we want to build a smiley brigade, an army of smilers that can go out into the streets. Because it's not just about gifting a pair of socks. It's about asking the questions. It's about listening to the responses. It's about being present with the responses. And it is a learnt behavior. And that's what one of the projects that we're doing, because we do this so subconsciously, but how do we teach others? And so imagine having a Smiley Brigade out every weekend or through the week in your local neighborhood or your local community, making an impact to your community. wow, what the vibration, because everyone's gone through a challenge with what we've happened over the last few years.
Mm.
We've been disconnected more than ever before. And so this is where an opportunity to reconnect, to come back and to put your head over the fence, go, oh, hi, neighbor, or pick up the phone and go, hey, family, can I come over and visit? Because now we have that opportunity that we can, but we've got to relearn on how do we actually hold that space and reconnect. So interesting times ahead, that's for sure.
Yeah. In this here podcast here, we want to ask some questions, unexpected questions. Give you no opportunity for preparation. To get to know
Wouldn't expect
you.
anything less.
Yeah. But we talk about the business of smiles. We talk about what people do on this podcast. We talk about the problems that they see and the solutions that they can offer and all that sort of stuff. But what I want to do is have people listen to this, get to know the person that is speaking, not just the talking head behind the whatever. So, James Short. Sounds like this is your life.
It does, doesn't it?
One question left of field. Well, firstly, before you answer the question, other than the business of smiles, what do you do? What do you have another job? Do you are you just a kept man? What's the story?
So the Business of Smiles, which is our registered charity, that's all volunteer work.
Yeah.
So in order to, live the lifestyle up here, I run also a performance coaching company that we focus on leadership, mindset, and strategy, which is mainly focused around the real estate and the property industry. So been doing that for a number of years now. Also, amazing husband, almost 25 years, and 3 awesome kids as well.
Yeah. So having said that, because I had to establish that before I can ask this, if you weren't doing that, what other occupation would you like to give a crack to? Like what would be a really cool occupation that you'd like to have a go at?
Oh, that's a really good question. I
I want to
would
be a
love to.
helicopter pilot if that helps, but
I would actually love to build my own house, if you can call that as an occupation, to get paid to build my own house.
well, it is an occupation. They're called builders.
I know, right?
So, yeah. Well, have you ever watched? Have you watched many episodes of Grand Design?
Oh, mate, I've watched them all. That's the thing. I've run out of all the episodes.
Well, and you still want to build your own house. You are a glutton for
I know.
punishment.
I know.
But I can see the attraction. It would. I've often thought of that same thing, but unfortunately, I have the attention span of a goldfish. So,
But this house would be on a farm. This house would be on a farm, so it would be
Yeah.
more of a farmhouse than anything in the city. So
is it going to happen?
it's part of the goals. Yeah, it's part of the goals. So definitely on the list. Definitely on the list. It's still
Yeah,
in
brilliant.
negotiations with the wife. So because she's actually the logical one and implements the stuff from a Grand Designs.
So, second question, which has 3. It's not 3 parts, but you need to give me 3 different answers, because I just want to know what you're interested in. So, you're allowed to invite 3 different people over to dinner, your house. They can be from any time in the planet's history, so they're alive or dead. Who are the 3 people that you would invite? Not including me or Scott Carson.
Bugger. Martin Luther King.
Yeah, why?
The power of his movement, and to be immersed of and with his energy, and to learn from his journey from hearing it from him personally.
Okay. Person number 2.
Person number 2 would be, who came to my mind would be Kobe Bryant. His work ethic, his dedication. My daughter is right into her basketball. She actually just been selected to tour the USA next year on a tour squad for scholarships in the USA for colleges and so forth. So just to be amongst Kobe and his intel and his passion and his dedication and drive for outcome, like that would be number 2.
Yeah.
And number 3 would be, I'd like Tony Robbins around the table. I think having him personally around a table would just the ability to pick up on language patterns that may or may not be consciously aware, but also to share his insights and his visions on where he sees things going in the future as well with his business mindset would be phenomenal.
Yeah. Do you happen to know offhand Martin Luther King's height?
No.
You should look it up just to find out, because like if he's tall, you're in real trouble. You'd have these 3 people sitting around the table and
I know,
your
right?
nose would be on the table like this.
Have to bring a high chair.
Yeah, you got these 3 guys and James sitting in a high chair. That would be hilarious.
It would be fun.
Love your answers. Tell me about the exploits of the business of Smiles in the future. What are the big plans? What events have you got coming up? How can people get involved to assist what you're up to?
We've got some awesome events coming up. We've got the 24th of November in Frankston, Melbourne, where we're hosting a movie night, which is a fundraiser to start this next initiative. But this 24th of November will be held in Frankston. So there's all the details over at our website, which is ihopeyouaresmiling.com, because that's gearing up to what's called the 12 Days of Christmas, where for 12 days from the 12th to the 24th, we're going to be walking the streets of Frankston.
Yeah.
And once again, connecting and handing out socks and having conversations, because by community, we can actually make an impact and make a difference. We'll have the big run next year. But our bigger picture is really to build this Smiley Brigade, is to really connect with so many different people, to share that message and to teach them how to walk the streets, how to listen, how to hear people, see people, acknowledge people, and gift the pair of socks. Because if we can teach that, then it's going to be a beautiful multiple effect on raising the vibration and raising hope within our communities, and really have that connection piece back in where it should be. So it's all systems go. It's a busy rest of the year, and 2023 is gaming up to be another big year as well. So we are excited, and we're looking to get more socks. And if you ever want a pair of socks, you can just get them at ihopeyouaresmiling.com, and they're an amazing conversation starter, that's for sure.
Yeah. We'll definitely be putting that in the description for the replay of this as well. What you just said then about the army of smilers, that begs the obvious question: if someone wants to become a smiler, do they reach out to you? Do they reach out to Scott? What's the pathway?
Definitely either Scotty or I. All our details are on the website, I Hope You Are Smiling, or simply shorty at thebusinessofsmiles.com.au, and let's have a conversation. Let's have a chat, because that's where it all starts.
Yeah. And what sort of things would if I'm joining the army of smilers, what sort of things do I get involved with? Obviously, you said you're going to teach people how to engage and how to hold space and how to listen to others, and then what else can I expect that I'll be doing?
You'll be having a personal development revolution.
Wow.
Because this is a growth phase for those smilers. For those wanting to put their hand up and coming on the journey, they're ready for a shift, they're ready for a change, they're ready to give back, but it's also giving back to themselves. And this is a great opportunity to learn these techniques, to learn this process, and to have a shift within yourself as well. The ability to, and this is the beautiful thing about doing this type of work, you're helping others, but you're also helping yourself, which is a beautiful gift to have.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talk about in our group all the time, and you've heard it, is put your own oxygen mask on. Like, I remember, speaking of Mr. Robbins towering over you at the dinner table. I had the fortune of meeting him in Hawaii many years ago, and having a conversation with him in the break in one of his sessions I was doing. It was called Mastery University, I think, on the big island of Hawaii, Kona. You'd start at 7 a.m, and by 7:30 you'd be climbing some big pole and jumping off to a trapeze that was just, they put it out of reach, so you just had to leap into the air off the top of a pole. That's how you start your day. And you just power on through till 5 p.m. is your first break, from 7 a.m. And then 6:30 you go back in, 6:30 p.m, and you power through till 2 a.m, and then you start it all over again. And it was 9 days in a row. Pretty powerful experience. But on one of those breaks in the middle of the day, I was just sort of floating around in this pool outside, and I was sort of on my back like this, and Tony must have been under the water, and he's come up out of the water, and he stood up, and I was probably only in waist deep water, and he just kept going and going and going and going. I'm going, holy crap. And we had a bit of a conversation, and he's a terribly nice fella, incredibly powerful, like with his words and his influence. Would be a good conversation. I hope I would be invited to that dinner. I'd be there for sure.
Good.
Absolutely incredible. So, thank you very much for your generosity and sharing with this, and thank you very much for being part of the business of smiles. I mean, I stand back and I watch what's going on, and I support where I can, but both you and Scott and other people like Andrea's watching live as we speak. I noticed also somebody I spoke to last week, connection with Scott Carson, Shane Strong, he's watching as well. He's doing a unraveling the spaghetti brain inside the ToolShed workshop tomorrow night. That'll be interesting.
Awesome.
So, I just want to, you guys are always thanking everybody else. I want to thank you for what you do, and supporting Scott. I know Scott supports you as well. You support each other. But he needs help. I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say Scott Carson needs help. So I'm really glad that you're there for him. He's got a truckload of respect for you, and I understand why. You're a wonderful person, a magnificent contributor, and an inspiration. So it's just wonderful having you on the ToolShed podcast. I really appreciate it.
Mick, thank you from my heart to yours. You are an amazing man. You gift so many people in so many ways. You make a massive difference in this world. And for all those listening, if you're not part of the ToolShed, if you're not part of the Business Builders Black Belt, get in and have a chat, because, mate, thank you. It's a rippling effect. And from my heart to yours, really appreciate it.
I appreciate the appreciation. So thank you again for speaking with us. And that's it, folks, for this episode of the ToolShed. Please jump in and support the business of smiles. I hope you are smiling.com is where you can go. Have a conversation with Shorty. Have a conversation with Scott if you dare. I dare you to have a conversation with Scott. Support them. Buy $100,000 worth of socks and give them away. They're doing great stuff, and we just need to get around them because they're helping so many people around the country that really need a hand up right now, and they can't do it by themselves. So let's jump in and do whatever we can to support. I hope you are smiling.com. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again with another before you know it.